Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement, guys. We just went over a new way to play PvP in Heart of the Swarm. You can use Dark Templars and Oracles and Void Rays. The Oracles is a whole new unit, great at harassing. Dark Templars are easier to access now, and Void Rays are much more powerful against armored targets than they were in Wings of Liberty. Before we jump into our next section, let me tell you guys about our new YouTube page. Go to www.youtube.com/official MLGSC2. Get access to all of our great content here. We just recently uploaded all the old Rules of Engagement episodes, so you can catch up on those. We also upload, in fact, once you get past all these old ones, you can get to all of the new Heart of the Swarm exhibition matches we have. There's a lot of great content here. In fact, whatever you want, you can just go to a playlist. And if you want to find comments of the days, you can find comments of the days. You want to find highlights from broadcasters, highlights from broadcasts, Heart of the Swarm exhibitions, you can click there. And you can see, custom map spotlights, King of the Hill matches of pro players like Demaga, Ghost User, Crank was on here, Pult was on here, show matches. A lot of great content. If you want to catch up on Rules of Engagement, go to the Rules of Engagement playlist. It's ordered from the most recent episode. Of course, you can scroll all the way back and get access to the entire Rules of Engagement show. A lot of great content on YouTube, but you know what? We've got 1,600 subscribers. If we look over Call of Duty, they've got us crushed. 7,000 subscribers, and we have much more content every day coming out of us. All kinds of great stuff. We really got to show those Call of Duty guys that, you know what? The Starcraft fans like to watch videos and show their support as well. So go ahead and click that subscribe button. Get us a few more views. Jumping into our next replay, it's going to be... Oops, let me back this up a bit here. Got a little spoiler of the last couple seconds. That's not too important. So this next replay is going to be a one-base swarm host rush. And the whole idea of this is, first you have to disguise your build. Make it seem like you're doing something else. Then you want to siege your base with swarm hosts. Then we'll talk about different units you can build to support those swarm hosts during your siege of their base. So let's jump into the replay here and look at this from... the Ghost User is going to do this build. A very, very good... One of the very best American Zergs. Done very, very well lately. And we're going to see how he disguises the build. So you look at this through his opponent's point of view. His opponent knows two things. Well, one thing. He hasn't expanded. And if you're a high-level Zerg vs. Zerg player, or even a not-so-high-level Zerg vs. Zerg player, if you have an expansion and your opponent doesn't, it means that they made a gas. And if your opponent made a gas, it means they're very likely doing a one-base, speedling, bailing all-in on you. And so almost all the top-level Zergs are going to react by saying, oh no, he's coming with bailings. What do I need? I better get myself some spine crawlers, some queens to defend. I can't be too greedy. I'm already ahead in economy, slightly. I mean, he's not ahead right now, but once I get my defense up with this extra base, I can build drones and then be ahead in economy. All you have to do is defend for now, as long as I know he's not building the hatchery. So you want to make sure that they think it's that type of build. Now, if their drone gets in your base, you really don't want them to see too much. Now, if all he sees is a hatchery, that's going to confirm his suspicions that you're going for that bailing bust. But of course, as soon as that scout gets killed, you make that hatchery into a lair. Little does your opponent know that there's no actual threat there. Move out with some Zerglings that you're gonna get speed on very shortly to reinforce the idea that you're coming at them with speedings and baitings, and they got to get these spine crawlers in order to defend against the incoming massive bailing kind of wave that's going to attack their opponent. And all this is causing them not to build too much economy, because really he only needs about one spine crawler to defend us. But of course, he doesn't know that these aren't all going to turn 12 baitings and then be backed up by a speeding rally. So he's got to make the extra ones to be safe. Meanwhile, your opponent doesn't have a significant econ advantage because they haven't really been able to utilize their extra base very well. And that's exactly what you want, because you're on even economy for as long as possible, and you get this lair up. And then the instant that lair gets up, you go for those swarm hosts, and you're going to start your siege. So next thing I'm going to talk about is basically how to siege your opponent. Notice that you do not want to invest in the swarm host upgrade in your infestation pit. If we look at the production tab, spend all your money just on those swarm hosts. You want as many as possible so they can make those overwhelming waves of locusts. So as you start your siege, there's a couple important things. One, keep your swarm hosts back from your opponent. They do not need to be close. They have tons of range because the life of the locust is actually quite high. So you want to basically keep them very back and be very, very patient. There's no need to kill your opponent early. Even though at this point we can now see his opponent has significantly higher economy than him because of utilizing the extra base. But you know what? It's okay. He can have less economy because each time these locusts come in, he's not losing any money. But every time they kill a roach, they kill a spine crawler, they kill even a couple zerglings, he's getting very cost-efficient trades. I mean, it's free units for units, right? So it can't not be cost-efficient. And their extra economy has to be spent on replacing units that you're killing using those swarm hosts for free, basically. So that's going to tax the resources enough that there's no rush to really get in there and kill them very quickly. You can take your time and methodically just wait for waves and waves and waves of these little locusts to really wear them down. So now I want to talk about different units you can get to support this push. Spine crawlers are absolutely amazing. In fact, if we rewind this just a little bit, we can see one thing that Ghost User did is he dropped creep with an Overlord, and then he uses that creep to build spine crawlers out of range so they're safe while they're being built. And of course, you protect the spine crawlers initially with the swarm hosts. As your opponent gets enough units that maybe they can start to overwhelm your swarm hosts to get detection, they start to react to your swarm hosts. By that time that they have enough units, hopefully your spine crawlers are done, and your spine crawlers can protect your swarm hosts very, very, very well. What spine crawlers do, let's actually just play this out while I talk about this. What spine crawlers do is they combine a long range, they have a 7-range attack, with very, very high combat stats for their cost. They're very, very cheap for their combat stats. Now, why doesn't everyone always mass swarm host then if they're just everything about them is absolutely amazing? Well, the reason that everyone doesn't mass them is because they're immobile. They can't move around very well. But when you're doing a siege situation and the battle is going to be in only one location, it's actually not important that they don't move, right? The movement is a non-factor because they're sieging your opponent's base. You notice right here, he also used a lot of banelings to support this attack. Now, what banelings do that's great about them is they always do damage as long as they get close to their opponents. So think about this situation, right? You're investing in a whole bunch of these swarm hosts. Your opponent has extra economy. They're going to have more basic units than you. In fact, if we go back here, we can see how many roaches he was really up against, right? A lot of roaches, right? He's going to have more units than you. Now, what happens if you send like 2 roaches against 6 roaches? Or 2 zealots against 6 zealots? Well, what happens is that your 2 zealots or 2 roaches don't actually do anything because they just get ganged up on and die before they can deal a lot of damage. Now, what happens if you send in an inferior number of banelings against a superior force? They get ganged up on and die before they get many attacks off, but you know what? A baneling doesn't need many attacks to do its damage. It just needs 1. So it's okay that you're vastly outnumbered. It's okay that your banelings get ganged up on and die very quickly, because that's the whole point of a baneling. It's supposed to die very quickly. So banelings are a great support for this technique as well. And as you methodically pick away at their army, eventually you get these waves of locusts that get relatively stronger relative to your opponent's forces. As they run out of spine crawlers, each wave starts to do successively more and more damage, and you can overwhelm your opponent and win the game. Now, one thing I want to talk about really quickly is another alternative way to play this. So we see Ghost User got in his opponent's face with these spine crawlers and played pretty aggressively. One thing I would have liked to actually see is if he brought in more Overlords and more drones. And instead of maybe, the banelings are great if he wants to make it a high-impact battle. But what he could have done is, instead of making all these zerglings, that could have been more spine crawlers, and then even get more swarm hosts. Swarm hosts are slow, and they rally in slow, they build slow. But what you can do is you can play really slow by, around this area, get a whole bunch of Overlords, and maybe like 5 or 6, send a queen up, drop a creep tumor, and build not just 3 spine crawlers, but like literally like 18 spine crawlers, right? These are all spine crawlers, right? You get a whole bunch of spine crawlers, and then these swarm hosts, these guys can just retreat back behind him. And the locusts can actually go a really far range, right? So you'll be totally fine sending locusts out all the way into your opponent's force. You'll be totally fine, everything. And it'll be interesting, different way to play it is basically a slower with more spine crawlers, more swarm hosts. You've got to be careful. If you do that strategy, they might switch to Mutalists. So keep an overseer scouting your opponent. Try to see if they do that. If they do, just build some spore crawlers, continue your push. Make sure your defense at home is solid as well. Maybe add in more queens, something like that. Maybe even go infestors, actually. Add some infestors in with your spore crawlers. Well, that wraps up the segment on the 1-base swarm host push. We'll take a short break, then be on with our last segment, which is going to be Terran on Widowmine dropping against Protoss.